Shreyas Chintaya Suvritam Tasriyohitasranam Sapatnai Pahina Prabhu Tasmadisha Pachantyame Shreyas Chintaya Suvrata Hitasriyo Hitastanan Sapatnai Pahina Prabhu Tasmadisha Pachantyame Shreyas Chintaya Suvrita Hitasriyo Hitastanan Sapatnai Pahina Prabhu Tasmadisha Pajantyame Shreyas Chintaya Suvrata Hitasriyo Hitastanan Sapatnai Pahina Prabhu Tasmadisha Pajantyame Shreyas Chintaya Suvrata Hitasriyo Hitastanan Sapatnai Mahina Prabhu. So the word for this verse, Tasmat, therefore, Isha, O powerful controller, Bhajantya, of your servitor, me, Shreya, auspiciousness, Chintaya, just consider, Savrata, O most gentle one, Hitashriya, bereft of all opulence, Hritasvanan, bereft of a residence, Sapatnai, by the competitors, Pahi, please protect. So, the translation. Therefore, most gentle Lord, kindly favor your maidservant. We have now been deprived of our opulence and residence by our competitors, the demons. Kindly give us protection. Purport. Aditi, the mother of the demigods, appealed to Kashyapa Muni to give the demigods protection. When we speak of the demigods, this also includes their mother. And then I'll read 16. Parair vivashita saham magna vyasana sagare aishwaryam shriyasa sthanam hirtani prabalair marmam. And the translation to text 16. The demons, our formidably powerful enemies, have taken away our opulence, our beauty, our fame, and even our residence. Indeed, we have now been exiled, and we are drowning in an ocean of trouble. Text 17. Yahatani puna sadho prapadyeran mamatma jaha tata videhi kalyanam diya kalyana kirtama. And the translation to text 17. O best of sages, best of all those who grant auspicious benedictions, please consider our situation and bestow upon my sons the benedictions by which they can regain what they have lost. In text 18. Shishuko vacham evana biartito ditya kastam ahas mayana ivam. Kastam ahas mayan ivam. Aho maya balam Vishnu, sneha badham idara jagat. And the translation to text 18. Sukadeva Goswami continued. When Kashyapa Muni was thus requested by Aditi, he slightly smiled. Alas, he said, how powerful is the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, by which the entire world is bound by affection for children. Purport. Kashyapa Muni was surely sympathetic to his wife's affliction, yet he was surprised at how the whole world is influenced by affection. Text 19. Kva deho botiko natma, kva chatma prakrite paraha, kasya ke pati putrajya, moha eva hi karanam. And text 19 translation. Kashyapa Muni continued, what is this material body made of 5 elements? It is different from the spirit soul. Indeed, the spirit soul is completely different from the material elements from which the body is made. But because of bodily attachment, one is regarded as a husband or son. These illusory relationships are caused by misunderstanding. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The spirit soul, Atma, or Jiva, is certainly different from the body, which is a combination of 5 material elements. This is a simple fact. But it is not understood unless one is spiritually educated. Kashyapa Muni met his wife Aditi in the heavenly planets, but the same misconception extends throughout the entire universe and is also here on earth. There are different grades of living entities, but all of them are more or less under the impression of the bodily conception of life. In other words, all living entities in this material world are more or less devoid of spiritual education. The Vedic civilization, however, is based on spiritual education, and spiritual education is the special basis on which Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna instructed Arjuna to understand that the spirit soul is different from the body. Dehinosmin yata dehe, komaram yovaram yata, tata dehantam praptir. Sorry. Thank you. My eyes are a little tired. Diras tatrana mukyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change, and that's Bhagavad Gita 2.13. Unfortunately, the spiritual education is completely absent from modern human civilization. No one understands his real self-interest, which is with the spirit soul, not with the material body. Education means spiritual education. To work hard on the bodily conception of life without spiritual education is to live like an animal. Nayam deho dehar bhajan na loke my eyes. Kashtan kaman arhate vit bhajam ye. Bhagavatam 8.16.15. People are working so hard simply for bodily comforts without education regarding the spirit soul. Thus they are living in a very risky civilization, for it is a fact that the spirit soul has to transmigrate from one body to another. Tata dehantara prapti. Without spiritual education, people are kept in dark ignorance and do not know what will happen to them after the annihilation of the present body. They are working blindly, and blind leaders are directing them. Antar yathantar apiniyananaste pisha trantyam uru zamni badaha. Bhagavatam 7.5.31. A foolish person does not know that he is completely under the bondage of material nature, and that after death, material nature will impose upon him a certain type of body, which he will have to accept. He does not know that although in his present body he may be a very important man, he may next get the body of an animal or tree because of his ignorant activities in the modes of material nature. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to give the true light of spiritual existence to all living entities. This movement is not very difficult to understand, and people must take advantage of it, for it will save them from the risky life of irresponsibility. So, Om Jnanatimrandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnebhyo namo namaha. This little section has Aditi having an exchange with Kashyapa Muni, her husband. And Aditi asks Kashyapa Muni to bestow upon her sons, the demigods, a benediction. And that benediction that she's asking for is that they regain what they have lost. And she's asking this of Kashyapa Muni because he has that ability. He's able to grant auspicious benedictions. Now, her particular request of Kashyapa Muni, it can be considered to be a motherly desire. And later on in this particular chapter, this is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead defines it also. he expresses it, talking about a deity's desire, as a desire for the welfare of her sons who have been deprived of all their opulence and who have been driven from their residence by their enemies. So the Supreme Lord later on, he states it very clearly, this desire of a deity's, as a motherly desire. So he puts it, you want your sons to regain their lost reputation and opulence and live again in the heavenly planets as usual. So this is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead defines her desire. She's looking for the lost reputation of her sons to be restored, and also their opulence, and that they can, as usual, be living in the heavenly planets. So a motherly desire is how it's understood to be. Now, Sukadev Goswami, he narrates the understanding that Kashyapa Muni had regarding his wife's request. And he didn't specifically see it just as a motherly desire, or in some way there was an inbuilt understanding of her relationship with her sons, but he expresses it this way. He says, alas, how powerful is the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, by which the entire world is bound by affection to children. So he's seen within her request that there's affection for her sons, but he's also referring to that affection as being under the control of the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu. So Srila Prabhupada, when he's commenting, he's saying that Kashyapa Muni was certainly sympathetic to his wife's request. And he was sympathetic to her suffering. But at the same time, he was surprised by the influence of affection. And so I guess one could infer that he didn't see complete attachment there. So, which again is perfectly natural, considering her role in relationship with the demigods. It's a relationship of mother to son. Now, generally, there's certain things that most persons are aspiring for, and that is wealth, beauty, and there's a certain social respectability that comes from possessing these kind of opulences. I mean, I recall in my time of living in New York, there was a very famous photographer, and one time having to go to the premises of that photographer, and I remember that there was a kind of almost awe about the persons performing some work there, because it was a mansion in the upper 60s on the east side of Manhattan, which is, considering how valuable real estate is in New York City, for one person to be having a whole mansion occupying the east side in the 60s was eliciting awe from the persons performing work there. So indeed, this kind of possessing that opulence of wealth grants a certain respectability to a person. So of course, one didn't know what the person's personal habits were or what his lifestyle was really like, but based on the external wealth, there was naturally just a respectability or a respect shown to the person. So if one makes a generalization, one could say that in general, people want some kind of material enjoyment in something like this mansion in the upper 60s in Manhattan, or they want material opulence. This person had a lot of fame. And persons also, and this Srila Prabhupada puts, they even want within their own families, they want to associate with those members of the family that have some aristocratic, way of being, or may even be connected to somebody in their aristocracy. And again, I'll draw from my time in New York, because New York is like the epitome for being able to observe people's desire for these kinds of enjoyments or opulences. It's like it's like being in a laboratory. You get to see it very close up. So, because everybody who's come there has got major aspirations. So therefore, those who have attained what people are aspiring for, you see how the respect is there, or how those persons are viewed. So in one of my work situations, the particular person had a connection to one of the aristocratic members of European royalty, like a personal connection. And I remember that when this person that I was working with needed to expand his influence in Manhattan, immediately the aristocratic connection was called upon to gain entry into, I guess, a certain section of society or work society that may have been a little inaccessible immediately, but it could immediately allow for entrance. So, so when I read these things in the Bhagavatam, Manhattan always comes to mind, and the persons residing there. Now, actually, all these opulences, contrary to the prevailing idea for persons who've come to Manhattan with all their aspirations, they're actually granted by the favor of Lakshmi Devi. And if one wants that favor, contrary to the general way of functioning in Manhattan, at any rate, is one has to take into account that she's connected to Lord Narayan. So there has to be a recognition of Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu. So naturally, all the persons, they're trying to possess Lakshmi Devi for personal enjoyment, and Manhattan is the epitome of such a place. One will be frustrated. And the proper way to possibly access the favor of Lakshmi Devi and these opulences that are being so heavily sought after is to engage in the service of Lord Narayan or Lord Vishnu. And then one can achieve the favor. So it's by taking a subservient position to the Supreme Controller that actually can bring that favor of the opulence or the wealth. So one can achieve her mercy if one prays both to her and to the Supreme Enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. And this is mentioned in one of the earlier chapters in the 7th chapter of this 8th canto in the purport. So, one could say, oh, perhaps this gives us some indication of the direction Aditi needs to be going, because she's seeking wealth, opulence, the celestial residence, which has been taken away. She's looking for the restoration of that opulence, the restoration of residence in the heavenly planets. certainly on behalf of her sons, but Srila Prabhupada says, when you talk about the demigods, you include Aditi. So can be included in that. Her request is for all, her sons and herself. So the prayer of Aditi is, she's very respectful. She says to Kashyapa Muni, please consider their situation and bestow upon my sons the benediction by which they can regain what they have lost. Now, in the early part of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva Goswami, he responds to a question of Maharaj Parikshit, and I'm bringing this up because I'm going to make a connection that I think is interesting. And Maharaj Parikshit had asked the question, what's the duty of an intelligent man who's on the threshold of death? So, one's in a crisis situation, and, what's your duty at that time? Like the biggest crisis in one's life, you're on the threshold, the brink of death, what's your duty? So that question was asked, a highly intelligent question. And the response when it comes is super interesting, and I think it's connected to this topic. Because the response that comes from Sukadeva Goswami covers the different modes of worship for persons desiring different success in particular areas. He's very specific, so there's a whole long listing. So, generally, one can have a comfortable influence over a particular matter. So in a specific area, just like, this photographer that I'm using as an example, he had influence, say, over the certain range of magazines for which his services were being commissioned. And now, if one wants a range of influence in a specific area, one can worship a specific demigod. So in the listing that Sukadeva Goswami gives, just as an example, he says, because there's a long, long listing, he says, one who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishvadev, and one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. So, so there's a clue for many of those Manhattanites. But he continues. So after he's given a long listing, and Aditi's in that listing with the demigods, she's to be worshipped if one wants a good stock of grain. And her sons should be worshipped if one wants to go to the heavenly planets. So they're included in the list of, specific personalities that must be worshipped if one's looking for a specific kind of influence. But then immediately after the long listing of the demigods, Sukadeva Goswami says, so this is somebody who's faced, what's your duty in a crisis moment? One should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement of knowledge and for protection of hereditary and advancement of dynasty. One should worship the various demigods. So, division. Lord Vishnu is to be worshipped for spiritual advancement of knowledge. But if one's looking for protecting one's hereditary or advancing one's dynasty, one should worship the various demigods. So the motives indicate who one should be worshipping, even in some crisis situation. Now, Aditi had to make some move because she was in a crisis situation. So what she did as mother of the demigods is she indicated her worshipable attitude. So based on what Sukadeva Goswami is, that division, you can choose Lord Vishnu or one of the demigods. And she was basically looking for some advancement in the dynasty, you could say, the demigods. So, she's looking for help for them, but then worship them. That doesn't fully make sense because they're in a troubled situation. And but in her case, she immediately indicates her worshipable attitude towards a devotee of Lord Vishnu, meaning Kashyapa Muni, because it's extremely respectful, the mood she has towards him. She says to him, "Most gentle Lord, kindly favor your maidservant." Indicates her worshipable attitude. "We've now been deprived of our opulence and residence by our competitors, the demons. Kindly give us protection." So this is how she's responding to the crisis situation. So this is something that clearly is devotion she's carrying. It's not possible in a crisis situation to, suddenly take shelter of a devotee of Lord Vishnu. I mean, one's mindset is very much in a state of either lamentation or attachment or some sort of illusion at that time. And so the fact that she just naturally takes shelter of Kashyapa Muni, who's a devotee of Lord Vishnu, indicates her worshipful attitude. Now, she asks for protection, and Srila Prabhupada, he's noting that when Aditi is asking for protection, it's not only for the demigods, it's for herself as well. And so if one were to look at this idea of protection, protection lies in making some progress on the path of spiritual advancement. And the reason for this is that there's protection within the eternal relationship with Lord Vishnu. And Aditi's concern is that with the loss of opulence, with the loss of beauty, with fame being lost, and even the loss of a residence, I mean, it's very extreme. Everything that was important has been taken away. And so her relation to the demigods, since they are her sons, and her consequent concerns, are similar to the concerns expressed by Arjuna in relation to family members, and this has been mentioned in 2 classes. In Arjuna's case, he was conflicted. He said, if we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. This is how extreme it is for him. He feels very strongly about it. Yet we are now standing before them on the battlefield. So he's in a crisis situation. He doesn't even want to live if he's going to have to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, but he's in the position where they're right in front of him on the battlefield. So major crisis situation. And in the same way that Krishna smiles, and this is Krishna's response to such a dramatic statement, it's a smile. And he tells Arjuna that he's mourning for what's not worthy of grief. That's a response of Krishna. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. And here, Kashyapa Muni, he's also recorded by Sukadev Goswami as smiling slightly. And he tells Aditi, how powerful is the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, by which the entire world is bound by affection for children. So it's a similar thing, trying to hone in on the fact that there's a reality separate from the one that's being perceived at that crisis moment. And Lord Krishna points to what that actual reality is. He said, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to be killed? So he's completely dismantling the hesitation on the part of Arjuna. And Kashyapa Muni, he also points to the eternal reality, does the same thing with the deity. What is this material body made of 5 elements? It's different from the spirit soul. Indeed, the spirit soul is completely different from the material elements from which his body is made. But because of bodily attachment, one is regarded as a husband or son. So Kashyapa Muni also brings it to reality. Yeah, I mean, this kind of attachment of an idea that someone is one's child is based on that external reality and the external relationship, but Kashyapa Muni is trying to break it down. Okay, it's in relation to the body, and then the body that's separate from the soul. So this reminder of the actual reality provides that protection, the protection of viewing each situation from the angle of bodily relationship, rather than from the angle of body relationships, from the angle of spiritual existence. So that's the protection, to be able to actually view things correctly in the crisis moment. And so there's a way of viewing any situation with broader intelligence. And this is irrespective of the particular material desires one has. This is actually expressed very nicely by Sukadeva Goswami again. And this comes from the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the 3rd chapter, the 10th verse. Akarma sarva kamo va moksha kamo daradi tivrena bhakti yogena yayata purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he is full of all material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead. So this is echoing the statement originally that I brought up, that Sukadeva Goswami gives to Maharaj Parikshit of a person in that extreme crisis situation, what they should do. It's worship of the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead. Whatever one's material desires are. So even at that moment, whatever they are, if there's none there, if there's many of them, still worship the supreme personality of Godhead. And how this spiritual perspective of existence can bring about change is that one becomes conscious of one's actual position. So it's very sobering, one starts to look at things in a proper perspective. So that proper perspective, or that proper position, is a position of remembering that there's one personality to whom one has service to perform towards. And this is based on that understanding which is implicit in Lord Krishna's statement to Arjuna, implicit in Kashyapa Muni's statement to Aditi. The reality is that the spirit soul that each being is, in actuality, is a part of that supreme soul. So actual happiness is experienced by the happiness of the Lord that one is serving, through that service, through that worship to him. So Arjuna, becoming conscious of his own position, It allowed him to stabilize because he realized that the satisfaction of Lord Krishna came before his own satisfaction. So that was his prime duty. He came to that understanding. And Kashyapa Muni, he's also pointing to going beyond that bodily perspective of family relationships to that of functioning to serve the Supreme Being. And we'll get to hear later on how it plays itself out, but this is at this moment. So these were some thoughts on these verses. If there's any thought to expand the discussion. Jai Baladev. This is a special gift to utilize one's intelligence to formulate questions, collect all the related things in one's mind and come to a question.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class. Referring to your comment just now, one thing I realized that's helped me, and it's kind of related to my point in question, is that the reason I ask a lot of questions or am able to is because every day I ask Krishna, give me something meaningful, and then you'll realize you'll be humble that I'm not in control, so then you're always asking for mercy. So whatever he gives, if he gives, or if he doesn't give, hopefully he gives, but and that's usually what helps me out. So maybe I think it's an important point for us all to keep in mind. So thank you for your class, but you made a nice point at the beginning that when you have wealth, this brings a type of respect, and everyone's seeking your mercy. And also Aditi or any of us, all the pastimes, the reason we worship people, and Krishna is the most wealthy, of course. And the reason we worship anyone or offer honor and respect to people is because they could give us some mercy. Please help me, I need the help, I'm poor, or whatever. And this kind of reminds me, I was kind of laughing internally to myself, because like, for example, if you're doing a project, let's say for the temple asks people to donate money. Obviously for these big projects, you need the help, we can't afford it all ourselves. And the one thing I was just thinking about is that you'll never say to rich householders, you guys are rich and you're rascals, you don't know. You're just materialistic. Can I get a donation though? You'll never say that. You'll honor somebody and respect somebody because they could help you. And the one thing, by contrast, we could see in the scriptures that it's described that even more important than those who are carrying material wealth are those who are carrying spiritual wealth, Krishna Bhakti. Shraddha Shabde Vishwakaha Shudrinani Choi, Krishna Bhakti Kola Savrakama Krita Hoy. Krishna says, and also Lord Chaitanya, I remember in one passage with Ramananda Roy, he asked him, what is the most auspicious thing in this world? And Ramananda Roy said, Shreya Made Kona Shreya Jivada Hoysar, Krishna Bhakta Sangha Vina Shreya Nahi Ar. The most auspicious thing is to associate with those who are carrying Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti, not those who are carrying spiritual wealth. So my question is essentially is that, or one aspect, maybe you could expand on some of these points, is that that's the tendency, is that when somebody has material wealth, then I'll honor them, I'll respect them, otherwise they can't give me mercy. But at the same time, spiritual wealth cannot be seen. And Krishna says even more important than spiritual wealth is to honor and respect those who are carrying Krishna Bhakti. And who's carrying Krishna Bhakti? Ultimately everyone is, but there's the difference between those who have awakened it. And so a lot of times we think, I don't need your mercy. Therefore, if you may not have any spiritual wealth, or I don't care whether usually we see externals, but we can see that Vaishnava Paraya, if you're offending those who are carrying spiritual wealth, Krishna Bhakti, which is everyone in the ultimate sense, Nitya Siddha Krishna, what is that verse? Nitya Siddha Krishna Prima Sadhya Kabanoi, Shravanadi Shutu Cheti Koriyaidoy. This verse says that everyone, Prima, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prima is in everyone's heart, but it of course has to be awakened. So of course there's different devotees who have awakened it more than others. And so how do we keep this in mind, that we're not in control of our life? Just like this verse says, refers to transmigration of the soul. We have no control over whether we get old or young. If we had a choice, we would stay young. We're not in control. We have no control over controlling people's reputation, just like Hiranyakashipu. He thought he could kill Prahlad because he thought he was a controller, but he realized, oh, I'm not. So many aspects we realize we're not the controller. So how to give up this demoniac mentality that, I don't need the mercy of everyone, pretty much. Everyone, every single living entity, because every living entity is a sacred part of God. So can you expand on some of those points a little bit?
So as I understood it, Jai Baladev, you were particularly pointing to persons having material wealth, and you specified a category, possibly the householders, and how one, would naturally accord respect to that category, which is something that came up through the lecture. Giving the example that the wealth coming from the householder can allow for certain things to be accomplished within the temple. And then you contrasted that with persons carrying spiritual wealth, and that wealth wasn't necessarily so visible. And in fact, one could take it that certain persons had that spiritual wealth, that bhakti was more awakened than others, but still not so visible necessarily. So you were wondering, in some sense, how one, I don't know, maybe implicit in your question was something to the effect of perceiving. Okay. Okay, so taking into account the statement you made that it's not so visible, then in some sense, asking for how important it is to find those persons that are carrying Krishna Bhakti is dependent on being able to recognize the particular persons that are carrying Bhakti. So, and of course, what would be the benefit of that, since indeed you drew our attention to the fact that several personalities point to the value that lies in coming into contact with such a person and attaining mercy from them. So, how one recognizes somebody that's carrying bhakti. Well, certainly there's the internal part, which is the part that is the invisible part that you were referring to, and that is that persons that are carrying devotion for the Supreme Lord, who've made that decision to worship the Supreme Lord, they're engaged in a process of surrendering their mind to the lotus feet of the Lord. And this is externally perhaps invisible because it's internal work that's been done. So what that means is that because the mind's the place where all the attachment and the illusion, the greed, where that resides, it means that internally the person who is worshipping the Supreme Lord is having to be confronted with a whole mental, emotional state that is epitomized by those qualities or those particular, could one say, qualities, that are present in the mind. So there's a battle that is ensuing internally. And because one recognizes that those are patterns that one's carrying in the mind, and those patterns are driving one to externally act in a particular way. So because the person who's carrying bhakti or a desire to worship Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, that person doesn't wish to externally be functioning, driven by those aspects in the mind. So the person that's carrying bhakti is always going to want to perform an external activity that's in relation to the Supreme Lord, irrespective of what the mind is dictating. And considering that there's this internal battle that has to rage between the demands of the mind and the pushing for an external action driven by the mind, and the preference given to rather going by examples set by these great personalities for how to actually deal with those murky spaces in the mind. So because one is seeing those persons externally showing behavior that's in accord with worship of Lord Krishna, this is how one can recognize that that person is worthy of a great deal of respect. Because despite all those murky spaces in the mind, and even when they're very prominent and they're pushing, the person's always making the choice for the external behavior that's worship to Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So it's recognizable and worthy of respect. And one may say that persons may be externally showing behavior that is worship to Lord Vishnu, but the internal part may be lacking. So because one cannot see the internal part, how does one know who's worthy of respect or who isn't, which was sort of brought up in your question. Well, anybody who is consistently performing external behavior that's worship of Lord Krishna is clearly very much worthy of respect. The consistency is a prime indicator. Yeah. That doesn't feature. That doesn't feature. Even if it's the smallest consistency in the smallest area possible, it's still an indicator of something being pushed aside in the mind in order to be able to perform that external behavior. So even the smallest consistent devotional act makes that person worthy of a great deal of respect. So that's a response. Jai Baladev, thank you. So thank you very much for the class. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.